All right, today we're diving into some really fascinating and maybe a little provocative ideas from the philosopher Leszek Kolakowski and his book, The Presence of Myth. We're going to challenge one of the biggest assumptions of our modern world, that we've finally outgrown myth and live in an age of pure reason. But what if that very belief is itself a myth? So this really gets to the heart of it, right? I mean, think about the world we live in. It's all about science, data, evidence. It kind of feels like a given that we've moved past all that old stuff. We've got logic now. So haven't we finally, shed those ancient stories and superstitions for good? And this is how we're usually taught to think about it, isn't it? It's this clean, simple split. Over here, you've got myth, ancient, irrational stories. And over on this side, you have reason, modern, logical, hard facts. But here's the thing. Kolakowski comes along and says this entire picture is fundamentally wrong. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack. Okay, so let's start digging into Leszek Kolakowski's ideas. We're going to explore his argument for why a world completely free of myth isn't just something we haven't achieved yet, but something that might be totally impossible.
All right, first things first. We have to get on the same page about what we even mean by a myth. Because for Kolakowski, this word doesn't mean what you probably think it means. We are not talking about Zeus throwing lightning bolts or old folklore. No, for him, it's something way, way more fundamental to how we operate.
And this is really where he just flips the whole concept on its head. He says a myth is a necessary cultural tool. Think of it like a bridge. It's what connects our messy, everyday world, what he calls the conditioned world of temporary stuff, to these big, unchangeable, unconditioned realities. Things like capital T truth, capital B being, and capital V value. It's the glue that gives everything meaning.
So what does myth actually do? Well, he says it serves three basic fundamental human needs. First, it helps us make sense of the world, to see it as a purposeful order instead of just, a chaotic mess. Second, it's what allows us to believe our values are real and permanent, that justice isn't just an opinion, for example. And third, it gives us a sense of continuity, a story, so that life doesn't feel like just one random thing happening after another. And really, that's the core function right there. The whole point of myth is to save our world from feeling, disposable. It's what gives everything weight, what makes it feel significant. It's our primary defense against the idea that everything is just temporary, contingent, and ultimately meaningless. All right, now this is where the argument takes a really fascinating turn. Because if you accept that myth is about meaning, you'd think, okay, I'll find it in religion, or art, or literature, right? But Kolakowski says, nope, it's also hiding in plain sight in the one place you would never, ever expect to find it, deep inside the ghost in the machine of reason. And I know what you're thinking, because it's the obvious question. Wait a minute, aren't logic and science the enemies of myth? I mean, isn't the whole point of the scientific method to get rid of stories and replace them with cold, hard facts? So how on earth could they actually rely on myth? And boom, here it is. This is Kolakowski's knockout punch. He says, and I quote, "Belief in reason is a mythical option." Think about that. Our deep-seated faith that our own logic can connect us to what is true, that itself is an act of faith. It's a myth. It's not something logic itself can prove. Let's break this down because it's a really clever point. So, how do you justify logic? Well, you've got a few options. You could take a psychological view and say, oh, it's just a property of our brains, how we evolved. The problem there, that just makes logic a biological tool, not a path to truth. Or you could take a linguistic view. It's just a convention of language, a cultural habit. Again, that reduces it. But then there's the third option, the one that science kind of has to take for granted. This is the myth of reason. It's the belief that logic is something we discover, not invent, that it connects us to some ideal, pre-existing truth. That belief is the myth.
And here's why that matters so much. Without that foundational myth of reason, the whole idea of scientific truth just kind of collapses. It becomes nothing more than whatever is technologically useful. The only thing that separates what's true from what merely works is that act of faith, that myth, that our minds can actually access something real about the universe.
Okay, so we've seen it in science and logic. But this hidden structure goes even deeper. Kolakowski argues that the same mythical foundation underpins the invisible pillars of our personal lives, things like our values, and even how we think about love.
So let's make this personal for a second. Ask yourself this. Can something be truly wrong? I mean, objectively wrong, not just I don't like it. Because if you believe our moral feelings are just a product of our biology or our upbringing, well, where does that truly wrong part come from?
And this leads to a really stark contradiction, which Kolakowski lays out perfectly. Let's say you hold two beliefs at once. 1, X is absolutely fundamentally wrong. And 2, my belief that X is wrong is just a conditioned reflex from my culture or my genes. Well, you can't actually believe both. You're forced to say, I am totally convinced X is wrong, but I'm also convinced it's not truly wrong. It's a complete paradox.
So to get out of that trap, to truly believe in concepts like good and evil, you have to appeal to something outside of yourself, a universe of values that exists whether you believe in it or not. And that appeal to an unseen, unconditioned reality, well, that's what Kolakowski would call a myth.
And it doesn't stop with morals. It even extends to something as intimate as love. Look, we can describe love as a chemical reaction in the brain, right? But is that what we mean when we talk about love? Kolakowski says no. In its mythical sense, love is this profound hunger for perfect unity with someone. It's an attempt to literally stop time and connect with something absolute, something unconditioned, in another human being. So, we've seen myth hiding at the very heart of reason, and as the foundation for our values and even love. And this brings us to the big final takeaway. Its presence in our lives is simply inescapable. Whether we see it or not, it's there.
So here's maybe the best way to think about it. Myth is not some dusty old book of stories from the past. It's the invisible operating system that's running on your computer right now. You don't see it, but it's what allows all the programs, all our modern beliefs in truth, value, meaning, and love to even run in the first place.
And just to be clear, all of this comes straight from Leszek Kolakowski's really challenging and essential book, The Presence of Myth. It's one of those books that just forces you to completely re-examine the foundations of what you thought was a solid, rational world.
So we have to end with a question to leave you with. If Kolakowski is right, if our belief in reason is a kind of myth, and our belief in good and evil is a myth, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What are the other unexamined myths, the invisible articles of faith, that are shaping your world right at this very moment?